I was 8 years old when we moved into my grandmother's house. It was old, the kind of old that creaked even when no one was walking. The wallpaper was peeling, the air always smelled faintly of dust, and something sweeter, almost rotten. On my very first night there, she came into my room. She didn't tell me a bedtime story or tuck me in, she just stood in the doorway, watching me for a long moment. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Daniel, there's one rule in this house you must never break. Never look under the bed after midnight." I giggled. Why, she didn't smile. Her pale eyes widened, and for a second I thought she looked afraid. "Because it waits for you down there. It's been here longer than the house, longer than me." The way she said it, like she was speaking about a person, not a thing, made my skin prickle. Before I could ask another question, she stepped back into the hallway. "Keep the blanket tucked in tight," she added. "It can't touch you if you stay under the covers." And then she shut the door. I lay there in the dim moonlight, staring at the space beneath the bed. The shadows there seemed darker than the rest of the room, deeper, like they went on forever. At that moment the house groaned, just the normal sound of old wood settling, I told myself, but it felt like the darkness under the bed was listening. The first night in my grandmother's house felt wrong, not loud, wrong, like a storm battering the windows or a neighbor's dog barking all night, but quiet, wrong. The kind of wrong where silence doesn't make you feel safe, the kind where every breath feels like it might disturb something that's listening. I lay in bed, staring at the old wooden ceiling beams, trying to adjust to the musty smell of the room. The mattress was older than I was, sagging in the middle, and the blanket smelled faintly of mothballs and something metallic. The pillow was lumpy, and every time I shifted, the bed groaned like it didn't want me there. Somewhere far off, the grandfather clock in the hall ticked steadily, a slow, heavy beat that seemed to grow louder with each passing second. Tick-tock, tick-tock, that's when I heard it, a faint, almost delicate sound coming from right beneath me. Not a creak, not a pop of settling wood. It was a scratching. At first, I thought maybe it was a mouse or a branch outside brushing the siding. But the noise wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from under the bed. It was so soft, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. But then it came again, a crrrch pause, a crrrch long, slow strokes, like fingernails trailing along the underside of the mattress. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The air in the room felt heavier suddenly, like someone had turned the oxygen down. My skin prickled with the awareness that there was something below me. My grandmother's voice came back to me in a whisper, "Never look under the bed after midnight." I pulled the blanket tighter around myself, tucking it under my chin, just like she said. My eyes darted toward the alarm clock on the nightstand. 12:17 a.m. Whatever this was, it had waited until after midnight. The scratching stopped. For a moment, I thought it had gone. My muscles began to relax, my grip on the blanket loosening when I heard it again, but this time it wasn't scratching. It was breathing, slow, measured, the sound of air being drawn in through something that wasn't quite human lungs. A faint rasp, followed by a wet, rattling exhale. The breathing was low to the floor, right beneath my ear where my head rested on the pillow. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. I told myself it was an animal, a raccoon, maybe, that had somehow gotten inside. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. No animal breathes like it's waiting for you to make the first move. Then I heard it, a voice, not loud, not even clear, but it was there, whispering my name, Daniel. Every hair on my body stood on end. My heart pounded so hard, I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I didn't answer. I didn't move. Another whisper, a little louder this time, with a wet hiss curling around the edges of the sound. "Daniels, come see me." The clock ticked on. 12:22 a.m. I wanted to scream for my grandmother, but something in my gut told me not to. Like if I drew attention to myself, it would react. Instead, I lay there, frozen, my fingers digging into the blanket. The voice stopped, but the breathing remained deep and slow, like it was settling in to wait. Then came a new sound, a dragging, the unmistakable scrape of something moving against the wooden floor beneath my bed. It started near the head of the bed, then slid toward the foot, slow and deliberate, drag pause. Drag it circled under me, the weight of its presence pressing up through the mattress, like it was deciding the best angle to reach me. The breathing grew closer again, this time accompanied by a faint tapping, light, quick taps, like fingernails drumming against the wooden slats. They moved toward the edge of the bed, right where my feet were. I curled my legs up, tucking them tightly under me, terrified to let anything dangle over the side. My mind kept replaying my grandmother's words. It can't touch you if you stay under the covers. But then the tapping stopped. The breathing stopped. Silence. I almost believed it was over. I was just starting to unclench when the mattress dipped slightly. Something had pressed upward against it from below, just once, as if testing. The grandfather clock chimed from somewhere in the dark house. One slow, echoing dong. I didn't know how long I stayed frozen like that, my body stiff, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound to return. And then the scratching started again, but this time it was faster, more urgent, like it knew I was awake and trying to resist. S-C-R-R-R-R-C-H-S, C-R-R-R-R-C-H-S, C-R-R-R-R-C-H. The voice came back, louder now, almost impatient. Daniel, look at me. I squeezed my eyes shut so tightly that spots of color swirled behind them. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't even move my face enough to let the tears fall. Finally, after what felt like hours, the sound stopped. No scratching, no breathing, no dragging, just silence, the kind of silence that doesn't feel like safety, it feels like something is waiting. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the curtains. The smell of pancakes drifted from the kitchen. Everything looked normal, but when I leaned over the side of the bed to grab my slippers, I saw something on the wooden floor. 5 long scratches, etched deep into the wood, running parallel from the head of the bed to the foot. And at the very end of the marks, a small, wet handprint, not human. The second night, I tried to convince myself it had all been a dream. That's what people do when something makes no sense. They file it away under, must have imagined it, and move on. But dreams don't leave scratches in the floor, and they don't leave damp handprints that are still cold to the touch hours later. I didn't tell my grandmother, not because I didn't want to, but because I already knew what she'd say. She'd repeat her warning, tell me to keep the blanket tucked in, tell me not to look, and I wasn't ready to hear it again. That night I made preparations. I kept my bedside lamp on, a small halo of yellow light trying to fight off the darkness. I pushed my slippers into the narrow gap under the bed, like some pathetic barrier. And I set my alarm clock forward by 2 hours, so if I woke in the night, I could pretend it was still before midnight. It didn't work. I fell asleep fast, probably from exhaustion, but I woke up with a start, no idea what time it was. The room felt colder than the night before. My breath came out in pale clouds. The lamp was off. I reached for the cord to pull it back on, but stopped when I heard it. Not scratching this time, not dragging, whispering. At first, it was so faint that I thought it was coming from outside the room. A breeze, maybe, but then it grew sharper, clearer, coming from directly beneath me. Daniels. I flinched so hard the mattress creaked beneath me. The whisper didn't stop. Daniels. It was like hearing your name in a crowded room, that instinctive pull to look, to acknowledge, to answer. But I didn't answer. The whisper continued, drawing out each syllable in my name, like it was tasting it. Die and Ilth. It didn't sound like just one voice. It was layered, a chorus of different pitches and tones, all overlapping, like multiple mouths speaking at once from the same throat. Some high and shrill, others deep and guttural. The sound made my stomach twist. I yanked the blanket tighter, trying to remember my grandmother's warning. The whisper shifted. It was no longer just saying my name. It was speaking sentences, though I could only make out fragments. "A cold down here, we see you. Just look." The more I listened, the more it didn't sound like it was coming from under the bed. It sounded like it was inside my head. Then the tone changed. It was no longer coaxing, it was commanding. "Look." The word slammed into me like a physical blow. My body jerked toward the side of the bed, even though my mind screamed no. My fingers twitched toward the edge of the blanket. It was like my own willpower was slipping, replaced by something else. I forced my eyes shut. My breathing was ragged now, loud in the silence between the whispers. Then I heard something new, a faint, rhythmic tap against the wooden slats under the mattress. Not random tapping, it was in time with my heartbeat. Daniel's. The voices had gone soft again, almost playful. "We're so close." The tapping stopped. Silence. Then, slowly, I felt pressure against the bottom of the mattress. Like a hand pushing upward, not hard enough to lift it, just enough to remind me it was there. The pressure traveled, dragging along the length of the bed until it reached where my head was. I swear I could feel the shape of fingers beneath me. I wanted to scream, to run, to do something, but the thought of putting my feet on the floor was worse than staying frozen. The whispers began again, this time from both sides of the bed. Whatever was under there was more than one. One voice was low and rasping, the other high and breathy. They spoke at the same time, their words curling around each other. "We'll be here when you sleep. We'll be here when you wake." I glanced toward the alarm clock, desperate for morning. 3:03 a.m. The number burned in my brain. Somehow, I knew that's when they came. For the next hour, I lay there, muscles aching from staying so tense, the whispers ebbing and flowing like waves. Sometimes they were right under my ear. Other times they seemed to retreat into the farthest shadows, only to return again. Finally, the first hint of gray light crept through the curtains. The voices faded. The pressure beneath me disappeared. And just like the night before, silence returned. I thought I was safe until I went to put my slippers on. They weren't where I left them, shoved under the bed like a shield. They were sitting neatly in the middle of the room. And inside one of them was a clump of long, black hair. By the third night, I wasn't just scared, I was exhausted. 2 nights of lying awake, listening to those whispers, had worn me down. My body ached from staying tense for hours. My mind kept replaying the same thought. If I just looked, maybe it would stop. That was how the idea started. By midnight, it had grown into something more dangerous. Not curiosity, exactly, more like desperation. I told myself that I just wanted to prove it was nothing, that it was a trick of my imagination, or a weird dream I'd somehow convinced myself was real. But deep down, I knew the truth. The thing under my bed wanted me to look. That night, the air felt thicker, like the atmosphere itself was heavier. The clock ticked toward midnight. I sat upright in bed, staring at the dark space beneath me. From this angle, I couldn't see anything, just a sliver of deeper black between the floor and the hanging bedspread. It was waiting. I could feel it. The first sound came right on time, 3:03 a.m., a slow, deliberate dragging along the underside of the mattress. Then a soft thump, as if something had shifted its weight directly beneath me. The whispers began again. "Daniels," I gripped the blanket. My whole body was trembling, but the more I heard my name, the more my resolve weakened. "Daniels, we've been so patient." The voice was almost sweet, like a lullaby sung by something that had never heard a human song before. I slid one leg toward the edge of the bed. The blanket still covered me, but my toes brushed the air just above the floor. The temperature change was immediate, icy cold. The whisper rose into a chorus, multiple voices now, overlapping in a dizzying mess of tones. "Come see us, it's safe, we're smiling." I knew I shouldn't, but I leaned over. At first, my eyes took a moment to adjust to the deep blackness under the bed. The shadows seemed thicker than they should be, almost like they were swallowing the faint light from the window. Then something shifted in the dark. 2 eyes opened, not normal eyes, not even animal eyes. They glowed a deep, burning crimson, brighter than coals, staring straight into me. And then the grin appeared. It was wrong, not just wide, impossibly wide. The mouth stretched across nearly the entire face, filled with rows upon rows of needle, like teeth, glistening as if wet. The teeth didn't quite match up. Some were too long, others curved inward like hooks. And they didn't stay still, they twitched and flexed, clicking against each other softly, like they were hungry. I couldn't move, I couldn't even breathe. The eyes locked on mine, unblinking. The smile grew even wider, if that was possible. Then the voice came, not whispered this time, but low and resonant, as though it was speaking from inside my skull. "Found you." The bed shook, not violently, but with a steady, deliberate push upward, like it was testing how much strength it would take to lift me off. Something began to slide forward out of the darkness. The head came first, long, pale, and impossibly thin, with skin that looked almost translucent. Strands of hair hung in wet, uneven clumps, dripping something that hissed faintly when it hit the floor. Its neck stretched too far, bending at odd angles, like it had too many joints. I scrambled backward on the bed, pressing my back against the headboard, but I couldn't look away. A hand followed, if you could call it that, 5 long, skeletal fingers, each tipped with a black, curved claw. The skin was stretched so tightly over the bones that it seemed ready to tear. It gripped the wooden floorboards and pulled itself forward, just enough that its head was completely out from under the bed now. The stench hit me next, rot, damp earth, and something sweet, sickly, like rotting fruit. It tilted its head at me, its grin never faltering, its eyes never blinking. "Now you can't stop," it said softly. "Once you've seen me, you belong here." I lunged backward toward the far side of the bed, desperate to get away, but before I could climb off, another hand, identical, long, and clawed, shot out from under that side, gripping the blanket. The fabric tore under its claws. It let out a low, rattling chuckle, as if amused at my pathetic struggle. The clock in the hall chimed once. I don't remember hearing the others, just that single, deep dong. And then I blacked out. When I woke, sunlight was streaming into the room. I was lying in bed, my blanket tucked neatly under my chin. The floor was spotless, no claw marks, no stains, no sign that anything had happened, except for the pillow. On the side where my head had been resting, there was a single, wet handprint, too long, too thin, and it smelled faintly of rotting fruit. Morning didn't bring safety. It never really does, not when you've seen something you shouldn't have. That day felt wrong. The air in my room was heavier, almost damp, like the smell of mild had soaked into the walls. No matter how many times I opened the window, it didn't go away. I tried convincing myself it had been a nightmare. That the eyes, the smile, the voice, all of it, had been a trick of sleep, deprived imagination, but that handprint on my pillow, it stayed. And by afternoon, it wasn't just damp anymore, it was sticky. I didn't touch it. The whispers didn't wait for nightfall this time. Around 3 in the afternoon, I was sitting on my bed, staring blankly at my phone, when I heard it. Daniel's a soft, drawn out, so quiet I thought maybe it was the wind in the hallway. Then it came again, closer. Daniel, it was coming from under the bed. I jumped up so fast my phone clattered to the floor. My instinct was to run out of the room, but my legs wouldn't move. Something about the way it said my name, it didn't feel like a taunt anymore. It felt familiar, like it had been saying my name for years, like it had been waiting for this moment. That night I didn't even try to sleep. I stayed sitting upright against the headboard, the light on, watching both sides of the bed like a paranoid animal. The clock ticked past midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., nothing, and then 3:03 a.m. The bed sank, just slightly, as if something heavy had slid onto it from below. Not the floor, the mattress. I froze. I could hear the springs creaking softly, as though something was lying flat right beneath me, between the mattress and the bed frame. "You made room for me." The voice was muffled, like it was speaking through the layers of fabric. The blankets tightened around my legs. Not in a sudden grab, slowly, steadily, like something was winding them around me from underneath, pulling me down toward the mattress. I thrashed, but every movement seemed to make the fabric tighter. The light flickered, once, twice. Then it went out. The room was pitch black, and in the blackness I saw them again, two crimson eyes. Not under the bed this time, on the pillow beside me. They stared, unblinking, inches from my face. The smile followed, stretching so wide I could hear the skin pull. "We don't have to hide any more," it whispered. "You looked, you listened, you belong here now." Its hand slid up from under the blanket, resting lightly on my chest. The claws didn't dig in, they just rested there, pressing against my heartbeat. "It's warm," it murmured, almost lovingly. "I'll keep it," I screamed, or I tried to. Nothing came out, not even air. It was like the room itself had swallowed my voice. The eyes blinked once, and in that blink they were gone. When I came to, it was morning again. The light was on. The blanket was loose, but my chest, it wasn't just sore. There were 5 perfect bruises, each shaped like the tip of a claw. And they pulsed faintly, in time with my heartbeat. That was 3 nights ago. I haven't left my room since. The whispers are constant now, no matter the time of day. The eyes appear whenever I close mine, even for a second. And every night, 3:03 a.m., the bed sinks again. The hand rests on my chest, and the voice says the same thing, not long now. It's strange what you get used to. The whispers, the bed sinking, the hand on my chest. By the 5th night, I almost expected it. I almost waited for it. That day, the air was so heavy I could barely breathe. The sunlight through my window wasn't golden anymore. It was pale and sickly, like it was filtering through water. Everything felt slowed down, even my heartbeat, even my thoughts. I kept glancing at the clock, not because I feared 3:03 a.m. anymore, but because I needed it to come. When midnight passed, the house fell silent, not quiet, silent, no pipes groaning, no floorboards settling, no cars passing outside. It felt like the world itself had stopped, just so it could listen. At 3:02 a.m., the light in my room went out on its own. Not with a flicker, this time it was simply gone, leaving me in absolute black. I could hear something breathing under the bed. Slow, deep, patient. The smell of damp earth filled the room, not like mud, more like soil that had been undisturbed for centuries. At 3:03 a.m. exactly, the bed dropped. Harder than before, my body bounced slightly. The voice came instantly, almost eager. "You're ready." The blanket didn't just tighten this time, it yanked. I slid toward the side of the bed, my head hitting the pillow edge, the fabric wrapping around me like a cocoon. The claws dug into my chest. Not gently now, they pressed until I felt skin break, hot lines of pain spreading under my ribs. "It's mine," it hissed, all of it. I couldn't breathe. The pressure on my chest wasn't just holding me down, it was pulling me through. Through the mattress, through the bed frame, into the blackness underneath. I opened my mouth to scream, but something cold slipped between my teeth. A finger, long, slick, and shivering like it was alive on its own. "No more noise," the voice said. No more light. The last thing I saw before the darkness closed completely were its eyes, inches from mine, wide with something that looked almost like joy. And then nothing. They found my bed the next morning, blanket twisted, mattress sunken in the middle. I wasn't there, but the pillow still had a handprint, fresh, wet, and still pulsing faintly like it had a heartbeat of its own. It started with a smile, not the friendly kind, not the kind that made you feel warm. This smile was too wide, too fixed. I was on the bus, sitting in my usual window seat when I saw it. A man, or what I thought was a man, was standing at the corner as we passed. His head turned toward the bus so slowly. It was like the rest of the world was in fast forward, and he was in slow motion. Then came the smile. It stretched across his face, wider than I thought possible, pulling his cheeks almost to his ears. His eyes didn't blink, they didn't even move. The teeth weren't visible, not yet, but there was something about that curve of lips that felt wrong, like a mask painted by someone who didn't understand how humans worked. The bus rolled past, he didn't move, the smile stayed, frozen, locked onto me. I told myself it was nothing. Just a weird guy, but my stomach felt cold all the way home. When I mentioned it to my friend Sophie, she froze halfway through sipping her coffee. "You saw it too?" she asked quietly. She didn't mean him, she meant it. Apparently, stories about the grin had been circulating for years. People said it showed up in different places, bus stops, alleyways, outside bedroom windows at night, but always with that same expression. The mouth stretching far beyond natural limits, the head tilting slightly, as though listening to something only it could hear. Some people saw teeth, others swore it had no teeth at all, just black gums, but all the stories had one thing in common: after you saw it once, it came back. Closer each time. 3. The encounters begin 3 nights later. I woke up thirsty. My apartment was dark except for the streetlight outside my window, casting its orange glow across the wall. As I passed the window, I saw something in the reflection, a shape. I turned slowly. There, across the street, hidden in the shadow of a telephone pole, it was smiling. It hadn't moved since the bus stop, same tilt of the head, same impossible stretch of lips. Only now I could see a glint inside its mouth. I stepped back from the window, heart hammering. I told myself it was my imagination, but when I looked again, the smile was still there. And this time I think it was wider. 4. Dreams that aren't dreams that night. I dreamed I was lying in bed, unable to move. The room was dark except for the faint glow from my alarm clock. At first, everything was quiet. Then, slowly, a grin began to appear in the shadows at the foot of my bed. Not a face, not eyes, just the mouth, stretching wider until I could see the outline of every tooth, thin, sharp, and far too many of them. When I woke up, my jaw ached, like I'd been clenching my teeth all night, and on my pillow were 3 small, white shards. They looked like teeth. 5. The first close-up it rained the next evening. I was coming home late, pulling my coat tighter against the cold, when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to empty sidewalk, but when I reached my building's entrance and looked across the street, it was there. Closer than ever. The smile wasn't just wide now, it was trembling, as though struggling to contain something. The corners of its mouth seemed torn, little cracks of dark skin splitting open. I thought I saw movement inside. Something shifting behind the teeth. 6. The smile grows wider. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. That grin growing until it took up my entire vision. I started noticing strange things in the mirror. My own smile looked different. Sometimes, when I brushed my teeth, I thought my mouth was stretching just a little too far. One night, I woke to the sound of breathing right beside my bed. When I turned my head, there it was, not across the street, not at the foot of the bed, right beside me. The grin was now so wide it seemed to split its face in two. I could see the teeth clearly now, hundreds of them, needle, thin, some broken, all pointing inward like a trap. 7. The teeth, when it finally opened its mouth, I realized the teeth weren't just for show. They moved. Like tiny white legs, they twitched, scraping against each other, producing a sound like glass on glass. And behind them was nothing, no tongue, no throat, just blackness. 8. The last stand, I grabbed the lamp from my nightstand and swung it at its face. The grin didn't vanish. It absorbed the blow, lips stretching even farther to swallow the base of the lamp before spitting it back out. The thing leaned closer, its breath cold enough to make my skin burn. It whispered something in a language I didn't understand, a whisper that made my ears bleed. 9. The final smile. I ran out of the apartment, down the street. Every shadow had a grin now, in the store windows, in the reflections of parked cars, even in the puddles on the road. They were all smiling, all watching. When I looked over my shoulder, The original grin was right behind me, and this time the mouth opened so wide the entire head split in half, and the darkness inside rushed toward me. 10. Aftermath. The mirror. I woke up in my bed. Sunlight was streaming through the window, no sign of the grin. For a moment I thought I'd imagined it all, until I looked in the mirror. My reflection smiled at me. Too wide, too sharp, and it didn't stop smiling even when I stopped.